I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life. Comics, movies, and TV.
Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I am Keith Chow.
I'm Britney.
Hi, I'm Dominic Ma.
The gang's all here.
What's up, gang?
Not much. I'm excited. We're all back together.
Shout out to
fam.
Britney and Nate for holding it down last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nate said, when are you and him going to meet?
Well, you know,
Talk.
just call him up. Where's he at right now? Why isn't he here right now? Call him up right now. Next time.
Maybe for episode 6, I'll see if he wants to.
Yeah, for the finale. Let's get Nate on the horn so that the two Virginians can team up against you
Oh,
Californians.
you're
and we'll
both
see
from
which is the
Virginia?
better.
I didn't realize that.
We are venerated Virginians.
Yes, that's his, favorite line, too, from Hamilton, probably.
I should send him one of those young man, I'm from Virginia t-shirts from our Public store. I'm sure he'd dig that.
Yeah, he probably really would, because he wasn't sure he was going to like Hamilton, and then he watched it, and he was like, I understand, Britney.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Of course, we're going to get to Moon Knight, episode 5. I know last week you said that I've been hyping up episode 4 for a month now, and then we get to that episode. I'm like, yeah, you guys can handle it. So here we are, the first episode that I have not seen in advance. So that's
Because that
we're
was
excited
the
to talk
cutoff
about
point
that.
for the previews, right?
That's right. They cut off at when Taweret says hello, and then I was like, that's why I was like, holy shit, what happens after that?
Yeah, that's a nice one.
So we'll get to episode 5, but before we do, I did want to talk about a few things that's in the ether. Primarily, since Brittany, you are a host of a DC TV podcast.
Yeah.
I did want to start off paying our respects to a couple of Arrowverse shows that went away this week. CW announced it was canceling Batwoman after 3 seasons and Legends of Tomorrow after 7 seasons. And we're still up in the air about Naomi, right? There hasn't been an announcement about Naomi.
The only reason I feel like it will, if it does get a season 2, is because Ava is producing it, and they were like, let's give Ava one more chance. That's sadly the only reason I could see it going forward. I do like the show, but it does deviate a lot from, the story in the comics. And then I feel like, again, because she is such a newer character and has less, back history in the DC Comics world to go back on, it's very hard, I feel like, to really adapt a decent show that people who are currently reading her story right now will like. So that's why I feel like, it's kind of good that they waited at least 5-6 years to do anything with Kamala before, so I have more faith in Miss Marvel doing decent than sadly Naomi is, which I do like Naomi, but it's a whole different ballpark. Yeah. And
to be fair, ratings and all that stuff is not the end all be all, because I think one thing I read is that Legends for CW ratings is relative, right? It's not going to hit millions and millions of viewers like a larger broadcast network, but of the shows on the CW, Legends I think held its audience pretty well. It was one of the higher rated Arrowverse shows that was still on the air, and it still got the axe. And full disclosure, Swara, please do not get mad at me, I haven't been watching Legends for the past few seasons. I kind of dropped off.
Only Swara has, I think.
Full disclosure, the entire Arrowverse I've been kind of out on for a couple years now. I'm one of the reasons they canceled the Arrowverse. I apologize, CW fans. But that said, I know that season 7 ended on a cliffhanger, and so there's a lot of chatter about are we going to be able to give them a final, farewell? The way kind of Black Lightning was able to come back on The Flash at the beginning of this season, even though their show got canceled. First of all, do you think they should do that for Batwoman and Legends? Or, considering season 9 of Flash might also be abbreviated and its final season, that they have to wrap up the Flash storyline, does it make sense to bring Legends and Batwoman characters onto the Flash just to tie those bows?
I feel like I'm kind of behind on The Flash. I'm behind on all 3 of those shows, unfortunately.
Yeah, right, exactly. A lot of us are, and that's why they canceled them. Sorry.
So I feel bad because I really started I maybe watched the first 2-3 episodes when Javicia Leslie started as Batwoman. I'm like, okay, I dig this, and then I kind of fell off of keeping on track with it. The Flash has been hard to keep up with. Same with Legends. I just feel I always feel I also have so many things going on that it's hard to keep up with every single show.
There's so many of those Legends. Oh my gosh. There's a ton of characters.
Legends.
Don't you think it's safe to say we've reached the end of the
Wait,
Arrowverse?
can you clarify? Are you saying all the Arrowverse shows are going away, or most of them? Are you?
Well, most of them are. Like, the only thing left next year, because Naomi's technically not Arrowverse.
Okay.
The only,
As of
the only
right now, no.
Right. The only Arrowverse shows that are going to come back next year that we know of is Superman and Lois, which is barely an Arrowverse show anymore, right? Like, there's hardly any connection to the rest of the
So you're saying in the time
universe
of every
and The
cinematic
Flash.
multiverse expanding, the Arrowverse is contracting? That is some typical DC shit right there. That is just how it goes on the DC side. Look, multiverses are big and awesome. Look, we have one. Oh, let's shut it down. Anyway.
Yeah.
I also, while we're paying respects to things in Arrowverse, I thought we should also mention that Neal Adams passed away. You know, when
That was the other thing I wanted to talk about this week. Because Neal Adams, one of the most influential creators of modern Batman, right? He was an artist on Batman in the 70s. Kind of defined that blue and gray, yellow bat look. You know, like, when you think of Batman, when you think of, like, classic Batman, 9 times out of 10 you're thinking of a Neal Adams Batman, I think. And so he passed away this week as well.
And he also did huge stuff on Green Arrow and Green Lantern.
Right. I mean, he was,
One of the
yeah,
definitive
exactly. His
artists.
Green Arrow run is also influential. A lot of the stuff in Arrow, I think, was pulled from a lot of the Neal Adams stuff back in the 70s. So, yes, R.I.P. to Neal Adams.
Yes. So respect to that guy. But that is interesting. I didn't mean to detract, but the
No. I mean, of course, I wanted to talk about Neal Adams too, because it was a big deal that he
was a
passed.
big deal as far as shared universes on TV.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people are hoping, obviously, HBO Max will bring those back. But it is kind of telling that they canceled, you know, Black Lightning, Batwoman, and Legends, which all 3 of those shows known for having representation of people of color, black people, as well as, you know, LGBTQ community. So it's like, it's very telling that those 3 shows that have, you know, pretty decent representation of all have been, like, axed.
Yeah, sure.
And yes, there, you know, we do have Joe and Wes Allen, and there are every now and then, you know, people of color, and Cisco was on the show for The Flash, but as a whole, you know, I feel like the other shows had that representation more downlocked, and it was more ingrained into their show without it feeling like, I don't know how to describe it. But yeah.
And I mean, I think there's something to be said about that, because part of what's fueling this sell-off, essentially, of CW shows, it's not just the Arrowverse, it's a lot of CW shows aren't coming back, and a lot of that has to do with the CW not coming back, maybe, right? Because
yeah, the CW is, it's most likely being sold.
Exactly. So, like, currently CW is co-venture between Viacom, CBS, and Warner Brothers. And in this age of streaming, in the age of everyone owning their own content, the CW is of a different era where like studios distributed content to different places. And because the CW is being sold off to another potential buyer, which is, I think, the buyer that's probably going to buy the CW is one of the controls, like, most of the syndicated channels around the country, and it's a very conservative. A lot of, like, syndicated channels are owned by, like, like, think of Sinclair Broadcasting, for example. A lot of, like, the local networks, and I think that's what's going to be buying the CW. So that makes sense that, like, if it's getting, you know, it's essentially going to, like, a Rupert Murdoch type, that they're going to get rid of all of the LGBTQ, all of the POC fronted shows, and I think in general, like, you know, Warner Brothers doesn't have any and won't have any investment in the CW going forward. You know, especially after the sale goes through. Doesn't make sense for them to continue making DC shows exclusive to the CW. So I don't know that the Arrowverse will come back to HBO Max, but we're going to see HBO Max be the headquarters of most DC content going forward.
Be developed through HBO Max now? Is that sort of the...
Yeah, it's the trend of, like, again, studios owning their own content. So, like, we know Peacemaker's coming back for a second season. We know Penguin is being greenlit at HBO Max. I think there's a good chance Stargirl, because Stargirl was originally a DC Universe / HBO Max show, that probably will continue. Titans will continue. So you're going to have DC TV content. It's just not going to be on the CW anymore. And I think that's, you know, after, like, almost 20 years, right, since Smallville, CW was synonymous with, like, DC content. Like, your whole podcast network is essentially a CW, you know, podcast network.
Yeah,
and there's not going to be any CW shows anymore. But, you know, that said, it did sound like they're still going forward with the Gotham Knights show and the Justice U show. So like that doesn't make any sense. Like you would continue. I feel like just kill the Arrowverse.
Well, yeah, was Gotham Knights supposed to come out HBO Max, or it was supposed to come out the CW?
No, those are CW shows. Yeah.
CW.
So I mean, who knows? Who knows if they'll actually go forward? Like there was no official announcement of canceling those pilots. But you know, a lot of times pilots get made and never get picked up. Like Green Arrow and the Canaries never got picked up, and they filmed the pilot. So I think it. You know, honestly. As the end of an era, I was one of the original fans of Smallville, but I think it's time to say goodbye to DC on CW. Yeah. And I think the CW is going to cease to exist as we know it going forward anyway. So, what's not ceasing to exist is the MCU. That's still the big daddy in town. And there's been some rearranging. It looks like the Marvels and Ant-Man Quantumania got flipped. So now Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out first in February. The Marvels gets pushed back to the July date. And it makes me wonder, like, you know, because the MCU is so intricately plotted that things that bleed from one movie to the other. But do you think, like, having the Marvels and Quantumania flip, do you think that, like, there are some things that are going to be, you know, of course, in this week, Multiverse of Madness comes out. Like, is there going to be some things that makes it easy to, like, you know, change course, right? Because if one thing leads to another, how was the Marvels able to flip spaces with Quantumania?
The only reason why I think they're flipping, I feel like it's because of all the movies that are actually coming out in July that year. I believe it's like Jurassic Park and something else, and like Ant-Man amongst those. I feel like Ant-Man is not going to have a big of a following as
Jurassic Park comes out this year, doesn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, I think Jurassic Park comes out this year.
Which doesn't mean there isn't another one next year.
I don't know. I just remember...
That's true.
I remember someone tweeting something that, like, all the movies that are coming out in, like, July of that
23.
year...
Oh, yeah,
of 23 would kind of bury Ant-Man, because Ant-Man is unfortunately, like, not as
he's
popular.
variable, he's
but I think...
size.
You know what? I think all of the Ant-Man movies have been great. I feel like I'm one of the only people who are like, but Ant-Man's actually one of the better, like, trilogies so far than some of the other ones, but okay.
But
so that's what I mean. If it's a box office reason, like the story wise, though, but how does that work story wise? Because again, MCU is so intricately plotted.
I mean, not that we know, but I'm really looking forward to the Marvels as the next big event, Endgame level. Wow, and I mean, it's got all the 3 favorite characters. Nia DaCosta directing. I think it should be epic on a scale that sorry, Ant-Man is not quite at. He's like, I mean, all love to Ant-Man. Like... For me, he's like one of those connective tissue movies.
And the Ant-Man movies have historically not been huge box office movies. Like, if we just compare Ant-Man and the Wasp to Captain Marvel, like, box office-wise, Captain Marvel was one of the bigger, you know, box office movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp was on the low end. That said, Ant-Man and the Wasp is teeing up, as far as we know, like the next big bad, right? Because Kang makes his actual debut in Quantumania, so maybe that has something to do with it too. Like maybe they want to bring Kang in sooner, so let's have that movie come out.
Well, yeah, bring him in so we can face him in the next movie. It's like a 1-2, like Infinity War Endgame thing.
Yeah,
I always think that was.
I feel like it's more of a box office thing. Just
yeah. I think that's what I read too.
February, you're less likely to have like a whole bunch of big movies come out at once, and then. The Marvels, like I said, has a better chance squaring up against bigger movies in the summer.
And Ant-Man has always been for the romantic comedy crowd, so...
Yeah, but we also know, like, there's no such thing as a summer movie season anymore, right?
Yes.
Like, if you think about it, like, the Batman came out in March. Like, March was always a dead time for movies, but over the last, like, 5 or 6 years, like, big movies come out in March. Big movies come out in April, right? Like, it almost seems like there's no such thing as the dead period in movie distribution.
Maybe because it's always been, let's save the bigger movies for, like, the summer or, like, Christmas time when people are less likely to be working.
Yeah.
But now it's like, well, if it's a big movie, people will see it whenever we drop it. But for smaller movies, they have to be more strategic. Oh, well, we can't put this up against
right.
Batman, and we can't put this up against like a Jurassic Park movie. So I
mean, it's kind of like back in the day when there was May and November sweeps. Like, no one cares about sweeps season anymore on TV, right? Because like no one watches real-time television anymore. That's what I get for being old. I do want to talk about Multiverse of Madness a little bit, since we are on the precipice of the next big Marvel movie.
Yes,
coming out in theaters. I have not gotten my tickets yet, but I will
Going
be
Thursday
getting
night.
Oh,
them.
you're going opening? Okay.
I have a bit of a beef with the marketing for this movie. It feels like they're just giving everything away at this point. Like, I want to be surprised. Or I'm of two minds. Either the shit they're giving away in the trailers is leading to, like, even more shit than they're going to be having in the movie. Or, like, for example, I would have liked to have been surprised that Captain Carter was going to be in the movie. Or that Professor Xavier was going to be in the movie.
Back up. What?
You haven't seen the latest TV spot?
I always I see the first trailer and then that's it now.
Sorry, I
And
just ruined it for
So yeah, I didn't know Captain Carter was showing up. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know. You know what I mean?
you. Yeah. I apologize.
It
I
was
should
one of
have
those,
given
like,
you
I
a spoiler
assumed
warning.
all the different characters that we saw throughout What If is gonna show up, but it was one of those. Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, why are you putting this stuff? I mean, good on you for, like, not watching it. It's my fault for watching these teasers and TV spots. But, like, the most recent one shows a flash of Captain Carter. You don't see, like, Haley Atwell's face. You just see the shield. And then we hear another bit of dialogue from Patrick Stewart. And we see the yellow X-Men 90s animated series chair. We're like... So it's like he's not the movie Xavier, but he's
that
like
would
the
be
animated
beautiful.
Xavier, because you see his, like, floaty yellow chair.
I would love if the multiverse actually contained animated universes, by the way. That would be like some Roger Rabbit shit.
There's a shot from the first trailer where it looks like they're falling out of X-Men 96, and yeah.
Maybe that's the Xavier we're getting, and because, like, they confirmed, right? Like, Baron Mordo says, you are going to meet the Illuminati. So now, I mean, we speculated months ago that it was the Illuminati, and now we know it's the Illuminati. So, I mean, what do we think? So this goes back just to, like, general spoiler talk and whether or not it's worth even getting up in arms about things getting spoiled. Because remember, we had this conversation about No Way Home,
Well, because it really worked for Spider-Man. All the things that were teased, all the things that people thought maybe this will happen, they did actually happen in the movie, and
It
that
was still
movie
awesome.
made $1 zillion.
Yeah, and the movie
it
still-
didn't really, it didn't like hurt its box office or reception.
Yeah, I feel like the way they did it for No Way Home was like, oh, these things leaked, and then you had people like, well, this isn't real because of this, and they were like,
and let's make Andrew Garfield, like, completely lose his shit for his Tick Tick Boom Oscars press tour.
Yeah.
Because people are just going to ask him about Spider-Man, and poor guy. Now he quit acting. Good job, Spider-Man fans.
The joke is actually that he quit acting because he saw Morbius.
That's more than a joke, actually. There was actual talk that, and I don't know how true that rumor is, but there was talk that Sony approached Andrew Garfield about coming back as Spider-Man and having his Spider-Man, essentially Venom and Morbius, those movies taking place in the Amazing Universe.
Oh, goodness.
And Garfield was like, nah, I don't think so.
No.
So I read that too, that like, more than a joke, that he was literally approached to come back as Spidey, but in the Venom Morbius world, or essentially, again, placing Venom and Morbius in his world. And he was like, "No, I don't think so." So they got to come out with a new Spider-Man.
I feel like I could have rocked with, like, Venom, but Morbius. I haven't even seen it. I just don't like Jared Leto.
There's no reason to see it. I told you, like, what happens with the Vulture, and that's all you need to know from Morbius, right? So, but even with Spider-Man, like, they didn't come out. I mean, of course, all the teasers now. I mean, everyone knows Andrew and Toby were in it, so that's in all the marketing now. But at the time, as you said, like, they would, like, CG them out of scenes in the trailer. And my point is that, like, why are they putting all of the surprises in the Multiverse of Madness trailer? That's all I'm wondering about. Like, even that initial tease about Xavier being in it.
That, I feel like that should have been enough to get people to be like, I want to go see it. But it's just, at the same time, who are they making the teasers for? Is it for people who aren't really online and don't read all the speculation? So the TV spots are now more for people who are, like, technically off Twitter or not, like, paying attention to the online talk. Like, that's where...
do those people care that you hear Patrick Stewart or see Captain Carter's
I think
shield?
they're just
You know what I'm
completely
saying?
mystified is what happens. They're like, what is that? By the way, they say the words Illuminati. That makes sense in the Marvel Comics context. That's a weird word to just throw out in the middle of a movie trailer, too. It's like, Illuminati now. That means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But, of course, we're talking about the Marvel Comics Illuminati.
But that's what I'm saying. Like for like the general audience, I get what you're saying, Brittany. That like you want to entice, but again, it's an MCU movie. You're going to make $1 gazillion without even having to like tease anything.
And also,
you know?
Yeah.
but also hold up. Like Doctor Strange is a less certain quantity than Spider-Man. Spider-Man is still a sure thing. Doctor Strange is, even though he's in the MCU, he's not. You know, he's not like the commander, like the sure thing hero yet. He's not.
Sure.
So I think they need a little more juice to make people interested in this movie. Not that Doctor Strange doesn't have its fans. Doctor Strange totally they're growing every day, but like.
But I just think like, but he was also in the $1 billion grossing Spider-Man movie. He's been in like the last, like I saw a graphic on Twitter, like
Ubiquitous.
Doctor Strange has literally been in the last 10 Marvel movies. Like if you don't know who Doctor Strange is by now, like if you've paid any attention to the last 10 movies, he's in.
But that was always
each
the
and
function
every
he had
one
in the
of them,
comics too. He was just kind of around when they needed some super magical thing to happen. So of course he was
Right.
essential, but he wasn't like the character that people had their like heart and soul invested in.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter. Like I'm the only one who we live in a post spoiler world anyway at this point, right? Like I think you know.
What are y'all looking forward to in the Multiverse of Madness? So I'm curious.
I really, really hope that we see Deadpool. Honestly, I love Ryan Reynolds. That's my one that I'm really hoping we'll see is Deadpool, and I don't know, maybe I kind of hope Hugh Jackman does another little Halasara maybe for a split second. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Or Chris Evans is Johnny Storm. That would be like that would really make me go like
Wacky.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really like thinking about cameos. I mean, I know that that's the one thing a lot of again, if you call your movie Multiverse of Madness, especially coming out of No Way Home, everyone's expecting a whole bunch of different cameos. And I think for me, it's more like what I'm most interested in is honestly like seeing Sam Raimi back in Marvel and just seeing like what he's going to do with it. I know that like when they announced it at Comic-Con like 5 years ago at this point, they made it sound like it was going to be like Marvel's first horror movie, but I don't feel like...
Yeah, but that was when Scott Derrickson was directing it, and I don't know if he was going in a route that was something that they weren't ready to do with horror yet.
But I mean, I feel like Sam Raimi he's a huge name in horror too, but there's nothing in the marketing that makes it feel like it's kind of like scary though.
I feel like he's not as like, I feel like he does more comedic horror stuff.
Evil
Dead.
Dead.
From what I've seen of him, where as Scott Derrickson, he does like the actual, like, I could not sleep for a long time because of Emily Rose.
Yeah.
So Scott Derrickson really does, like, if you don't happen to know what his like filmography is outside of doing Doctor Strange, he did Emily Rose, he did the first Sinister at least, and he did Deliver Us from Evil, I believe. And Deliver Us from Evil is not as scary, but Sinister and Emily Rose, those are some pretty freaking
Ethan
scary
Hawke was
movies.
in Sinister, wasn't he?
Yes, and that's why I was saying
I wonder
they need
maybe
to work.
Hera will show up in Multiverse.
But that was my whole, like, they already worked together. Why is he not Doctor Strange? And around the time they were casting Doctor Strange, he started to grow the gray, like, silver sideburn things.
What if Ethan Hawke shows up as an alternate universe Doctor Strange?
Oh, I would.
Could happen.
That
could
would
happen.
be like. That would be beautiful because
Anything could happen. But no, I think you're totally right. Yes, Sam Raimi's skill set was more for this kind of campy horror adventure, which is totally fun and a little bit gross, and that's why he was so perfect for Spider-Man at the time, because he could like sort of juggle all these like costumes and weird like spidery elements, and it was still fun. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see him come back to this thing which arguably he invented or was very, very key in the starting of this whole Marvel juggernaut. I mean, because
let's not forget about Blade.
We're not forgetting about Blade, you're right, but we're also not disagreeing that Spider-Man was a big
Spider-Man was big,
was a big deal for the
it's nice to see Sam
Marvel
Raimi
thing.
come full circle, right?
Yeah, I'm not assigning any one person to starting the Juggernaut, because I threw out the X-Men thing too. But that Spider-Man was a significant step in the thing.
And I mean, with Sam Raimi, it also goes back. It feels like Marvel has started to embrace directors, and not just kind of like. I guess what I'm trying to say is like Kevin Feige doesn't seem to be like the singular voice. which I think is a good thing, right? Like, when we'll talk about
Yeah.
when we get to Moon Knight, like, having things starting to feel a little bit outside of this very, you know, and this probably goes back to what we were saying about Marvels and Quantumania, kind of like, there's a little bit more freedom, a little bit more flexibility in the MCU, because, again, a director like Sam Raimi is, you know, I know you're not a big fan of, like, auteur theory, but, like, Sam Raimi has a very distinct visual style, distinct voice in his directing. Chloe Zhao had a very distinct voice, a very distinct style. You know, Nia DaCosta, like, we're seeing them kind of Ryan Coogler lean into the, let's hire directors who have their own style and not, like, necessarily having to fit into a house style that was set up by, like, Joss Whedon or the Russo brothers. And now people can kind of explore their different avenues, which is interesting because this leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about, is that, you know, you mentioned Johnny Storm. John Watts, who directed all 3 Spider-Man movies, was to direct the next Fantastic Four movie, has decided to move on, and now they're in search of a director for Fantastic Four. And I wonder now, again, if they're leaning into, like, hiring less kind of like house style directors and more like visionary directors. Like, do you see them moving in a direction that, like, not that John Watts wasn't a visionary, but, like, name another John Watts movie that doesn't have Spider-Man in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do you think they're going with the Fantastic Four now that John Watts has stepped aside?
I think that they're gonna have John Krasinski direct it as well as be Reed Richards, because since he's been, like, the, you know, big a fan draw. Just because he also did, you know, the
Quiet Place.
The Quiet Place. I was trying to think of the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Don't Talk.
And he was the Don't Talk.
Yeah, the Don't Talking movie.
And he was I think one of the runners up for Captain America like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet that's how they rope him into it if he's reluctant to put on the superhero suit. Maybe they're like, oh, if you direct the movie, and people, oh yeah, I do want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Krasinski and Blunt, who are married, and of course they teamed up in Quiet Place, have always been like numbers 1 and 2 for the fan casts of Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic. I know you've said he's not interested, but I still want William Jackson Harper as Mr. Fantastic. I still think he's the perfect Reed Richards.
Yeah, sure.
I think he'd be great too. But I don't know. I kind of think that they might try to also go for, like, you know, directors who maybe have only done, like, A24 films. Maybe that might be where they're looking at. Because we have to be honest, A24 is starting to become, like, the indie, like,
oh yeah,
MCU.
they're the
like,
number one
holding
like
it down.
non-major studio. Yeah, and we'll I know you have something lined up for Nerd Pop, and we'll talk about it. But Everything Everywhere All at Once this weekend dropped 0%. Right? Like, movies typically drop, like, even a good movie drops 30%, 40%. It dropped 0% from last weekend. It added theaters and dropped 0%. That's wild. That does not happen in the modern box office. So, but we'll get to that later in the pod. So, yeah, I wanted to just kind of, like, cover our bases when it comes to the MCU, especially since, you know, it's been a while since we've been on the precipice of another Marvel movie hitting theaters. At least since December. It's been 3 months. Okay. Fine. It's been 3 months.
Y'all better see it. I already got my tickets.
I guess we need something to talk about next week.
Well, we have 2 things to talk about.
I do kind of worry. Well, I'm concerned that it will just be a connective tissue plot revealing movie. I'm not sure quite what the thrust of it is, but I'll be happy to find out.
I mean, it's the only one between now and Thor, right? Thor's the next one.
I think Henry Cavill is playing Hercules in Thor.
Great.
Oh.
Why not?
That would be awesome. He'd be amazing as Hercules.
We haven't had any Marvel Hercules yet, have we?
No, but Olympus will show up in Thor: Love and Thunder.
And Zeus is
okay.
And Jor-El is Zeus, so it stands to reason that Hercules would be Kal-El. And wouldn't that be some shit if, like, Marvel figures out how to use Russell Crowe and Henry Cavill better than the DCEU did?
Oh yeah,
I can't wait for the Snyder Bros to.
I could see that easily happening, like, easily. Yeah, I think it's gonna happen.
Is that the plot of Love and Thunder? Does Asgard go to war with Olympus?
Well, no,
That
the
sounds
God
awesome.
Killer is
The
killing
God
all the
Killers,
gods.
Yes, so
Oh, that's fantastic.
Batman's going around killing all the gods.
basically, yes.
He does that too in the comics, anyway, sort of.
Well, that would be some shit if Henry Cavill does show up as Hercules and there's a confrontation between him and Christian Bale.
Yeah, and he'd be like, "Do you bleed?"
Everyone thinks the shot with Thor, Korg, and then is it Meek? And there's, like, one other person that there's a total empty space. So everyone's like, it's Henry Cavill as Hercules. And I'm like, you know what? I believe it. Because usually in between The Witcher, he kind of like slacks off on like working out a little bit. And he's been maintaining working out. So I'm just like,
You know, it would be a huge troll to DC if they did cast Henry Cavill as Hercules, only because famously Hercules has a facial hair. And
Right.
it's like, and we remember what happened with Justice League.
Right.
Yes.
Released the mustache
Exactly different
cut.
from Superman in one way. Always has the beard.
So let's have that. So no, I mean I would love that. Again, goes back. I would just love a scene between Bale and Cavill, only because, as I've said multiple times, and you know, Screen Rant posted this over the weekend. Like, what if Christian Bale was in Batman vs Superman? I was like, fuckers, I wrote that out 10 years ago. Like, why are you biting my style from 10 years ago?
They have to produce a lot of content. Pete. They have to produce many
I'm
articles
just
a
saying,
day.
like, I've been on that boat
their
for
mandate.
10 years at this point. But anyway, that's Multiverse of Madness. Let's take a break, and after the break, we'll come back and discuss episode 5 of Moon Knight. Guess what? Goalie Nutrition is sponsoring Hard Knock Life, and you can go to goalie.com to buy apple cider vinegar gummies, their ashwagandha gummies, superfruit gummies, and super greens gummies, and you get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the code HARDKNOCK at goalie.com. This is honestly, I've been taking the goalie gummies now for a couple weeks, and I have to say, they're tasty and they're good for you. Have you guys been enjoying the goalie gummies?
I really like them. They're yummy, but it's a nice to add to my like routine of already like I normally take just straight vitamin C, so it's nice to have like extra supplements.
For a long time, people have praised the benefits of apple cider vinegar, and you know, as someone who's had to like drink straight apple cider vinegar sometimes when I'm not feeling well, or you know, I have some joint pain, and your mom was like, drink some apple cider vinegar. It's not the most appetizing home remedy, let's just say.
No,
Right.
it tastes horrible.
Like
So
the apple cider part is like, ooh, does it taste like apple cider? And it's like, no, it tastes like vinegar. But ACV is very good for you. And the fact that Goalie has been able to put the ACV into these tasty little gummies made with pectin and fruit peels, which make them vegan, which is cool. So if you're vegan, you can still rock these gummies, because everyone knows gummies are usually made out of like gelatin and nasty shit. These are made out of complete non-GMO, gelatin-free, gluten-free, vegan ingredients, and you can get the benefits, all of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, taking these tasty, delicious, convenient gummies. So go to goalie.com and use the code HARDKNOCK, that's HARDNOC, just like the podcast you're listening to. Get 10% off your purchase of Goalie products and free shipping.
It's a much better delivery device for that apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
These goalie gummies are great. You get
I
it, and it's
agree
a
100.
delicious little candy. And I've been enjoying the superfruits one. I did feel kind of refreshed after taking a few of those.
yeah, no, but I'm loving them so far, and they're definitely tasty. If you just want tasty gummies, at least just eat them for the yumminess.
Yeah. So go to goalie.com, use the code HARDKNOCK, HARDNOC, get 10% off your purchase and free shipping at goalie.com with the code HARDKNOCK. Speaking of the gods, right? Moon Knight opens up mythology, theology. Now that like Asgard are aliens, but like, is Olympus aliens? Are the Egyptians aliens? Are the Wakandan gods aliens? Right? Like, that's kind of where we are with Moon Knight now, because we see a legit, full-on afterlife.
Or it's like Supernatural, where in Supernatural they actually confirm that every single body, everyone's religions and all the mythological gods are all real and they all exist in Supernatural. So it's like no religion is actually technically right in Supernatural, if y'all remember, especially in the first like 5-6 seasons. So they could be going with that route where actually, you know what, everyone's religion is valid.
I mean, Taweret, the
it
hippo
would be
god,
nice in that
essentially
way.
says that in the episode, where she's like, this is just one of many intersectional planes of existence after you die. And the
Yes.
ancestral plane is another one, which is the first time I think Moon Knight actually references another MCU property when they're talking about the ancestral plane in Black Panther.
yes.
And it's similar too, because like everyone, essentially when you die, you just your afterlife is a reflection of who you are. So like when T'Challa died in Black Panther. He goes and sees like this tree of panthers. That's what he sees. But when Killmonger dies or goes to the ancestral plane, he sees his Oakland apartment where his dad dies.
Yeah.
And similarly, Steven and Mark, when they die, they see an insane asylum as their kind of like representation of the afterlife. And that was the big twist from episode 4 is the question of, did the events of the first 3 episodes happen, or were they all in Mark's mind and he's just been in an insane asylum this entire time? So they of course answer that no, these things happened. So I was hoping that was an explanation why they were able to like turn the moon backwards, but that it actually didn't happen. It was all in his mind. But no,
Khonshu really did that shit.
Khonshu really turned the sky backwards. So
Yes.
all right, fine.
And
That's his field, the moon.
dead.
And they're dead.
Yeah.
And they're gonna come back though, right? Like that's the finale. As Mark says, "Send me back to the point I died, so I can avenge my own death or whatever."
Yeah. My only thing is, we all know this is the only thing Oscar Isaac is doing as Moon Knight. He doesn't want to be in the movies, and this is a limited series, and there's no plan for season 2, obviously. So my thing is, are they gonna cast someone else to play Jake Lockley and continue the Moon Knight character, and just have it be a physically different person, even though it was technically one of Mark's personalities?
Well, that's why I was thinking that it's possible that none of the events actually happen, right? Like if Moon Knight was going to be this one-off, that you could just explain it like these are all the things. It's like the Saint Elsewhere thing. Do you guys remember Saint Elsewhere? I'm going to show how old I am again. Like the final episode of Saint Elsewhere.
Yes, that was the one.
Where the series finale is, it was this like autistic boy wakes up from a coma or something, and it was all a dream. Like none of these characters were real. Everything that happened was this little boy's imagination.
Word Up magazine. I think you might bequeath the identity to someone, or I mean, if it is so that Oscar Isaac is not moving forward in the character, it could go to somebody else. They could invent someone who's Jake Lockley. It's sort of breaking from canon, but who cares? They've messed with the canonical idea of Moon Knight anyway. And again, no one cares because no one really followed Moon Knight that closely as I've learned over this past year.
Are you still hung up on the moonerangs?
For one thing, they're called crescent darts.
Yeah. Potato.
And moonograms, I don't know what that sounds like something that's on a pillow. That's like
MK is the moonogram, right? Well, Jake Lockley was in this episode. He's been in the show all along. Did you notice Jake Lockley is actually in episode 5?
Now I'm confused.
Yes. He's the one where he's about to stick the thing in his eye.
You notice there's an Oscar Isaac with a broken nose in the asylum when he's talking to Arrow? That's Jake Lockley. If you go back and rewatch, his accent is different. Right? Like the Stephen Grant is the British accent, the Mark Spector is the Oscar Isaac accent. And Jake Lockley, there's a bit of like a Brooklyn kind of tough guy accent.
Yeah, and he starts picking up the like glass pyramid thing and he's gonna shove it in his eye. That's for sure like the shot, just for anyone's wondering. That is definitely Jake. But I'm just wondering if like, since it's not fully confirmed that they're going to end up making him like somehow be played by
or he could die
person.
or he could just die.
I don't know about
Just
that, but I do know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened to Steven, right? Like I wonder, like in the finale, because they've made a big deal about them not acknowledging the third identity, right? Because there's a scene, I forget which episode, where
It's 3.
Steven wakes up and Mark wakes up and they're like, well, I didn't do it. Well, you didn't do it. Who did it? And they don't,
episode
they both don't know. Was that 3?
Yeah.
And of
I
course,
just
like the
rewatched
scene in the asylum where there's a sarcophagus that they just ignore. They're like, we're not opening that. That's clearly Jake inside that sarcophagus.
Yeah.
So this episode there was some Inception shit going on. Like there's like different levels of the dream, for lack of a better word. And that whenever you see they cut back to the office with Harrow, that's actually Jake, especially the one with the broken nose. Like there's a couple of like, it's operated on a couple of layers. And that's what I appreciated about this particular episode. It was like, it's actually one of the few episodes I went back and rewatched just because I wanted to catch all like the little things that I missed the first time. So one of those little things, it's not so little, it's the actual origin of Mark's DID as well as the origin of his Moon Knight identity. What did you think of those particular sequences?
It was very traumatic. I mean, I know that people who have DID, it is usually born from a very traumatic event, and it's a response to protect the child who or person. Some people, I guess, can get it later in life, but it's usually a personality that is made to protect the child from what has happened. Yeah, it was a very traumatic, like, thing, and then just to see the relationship with his mom, and then Steven thinking that the mom has actually been, like, alive the whole time, and just, I don't know, it was a very...
And loves him, right?
Yes.
That was a heartbreaking thing. Not that she's alive, but that she's alive and actually loves him, because she definitely did not when she was alive.
And it's so sad. It's very sad. It was done really well, and it really was like, it ends, that episode really ends very sad and heartbreaking, because you're just like, he got there, but at what cost?
And Dominic, you're the Moon Knight's comics expert. They pretty much recreated the comic book origin panel by panel.
Okay, I mean, I don't remember all that parts. I remember with the parts of getting to the temple and beating Khonshu and becoming Moon Knight. I remember that part. So if they did, or so if those parts were,
I mean, but it's pretty close, right? It's pretty close to the comic book origin, where he's a mercenary who's like on the verge of death.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not gonna like pretend like I remember every Moon Knight origin story. I don't know if this origin story was in the comic or not. I mean, I know parts of it were, but I mean, particularly the part of the childhood trauma and parent situation, I don't know how much of that was fresh in the show.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like the stuff in Egypt at the temple, and the my fist of vengeance, my Moon Knight.
That is classic Moonlight origin, and you know, that's when he gets the crescent darts or the crescent rolls or whatever you want to call it. Look, I thought this episode is really interesting because Marvel doesn't do a ton of these kind of stories. These just interior mind stories where there's not a lot of action and cosmic events going on. But I thought it was great because I think it was a difficult thing to do that Oscar Isaac ends up succeeding at. He ended up selling it by the virtue of commitment to his acting, because I wasn't sure about it.
He is
and then
so good.
It became, and then when he just breaks down in the middle of the street over his mom, I'm just like, oh, I get it now, and I get, why are you doing this? Because people have been critical, like, like Oscar Isaac's in this show, but he's like a handsome leading man. He's gonna be in this mask all the time. Like, why is he doing it? What's the angle? But to tell a story like this,
and it turns out he's never in the mask.
All right, yes,
Rarely,
not
yes.
much, as it turns out. Yes,
like Moon Knight is barely in this show, and that's like, bold of them to do that. Like, pitch this show as Moon Knight, and if you were like to count up the amount of minutes Moon Knight has been in the series so far, it's probably less than 10 minutes total. But
and it turns out that's
so
fine
effective
if you let Oscar Isaac carry this in each scene, because I'm a little bit like wary of the like multiple flashback scenes. Like that gets a little trippy, but I think he overcame that too by just showing us what was happening in this guy's face, guy's mind. And so didn't have to don the Moon Knight costume once, or throw a single crescent roll. But I'm sure there'll be lots of that in the finale.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's if Marvel has shown anything with their series so far, is that episode 6 or the final episode always tends to be the big, CGI battle. I'm hoping they don't go that route with this one, because that, I've said for I think all of them so far is that the final episode is usually where the show loses me. I didn't love the last episode of WandaVision. I didn't love the last episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? Like when they devolve into the big CG battle, I hope this avoids that. But there's some contractual formulaic stuff that has to happen in a MCU property. But they've so far subverted all of that in these first 5 episodes. Because there was a period, and I think I mentioned this, I wasn't loving Moon Knight. Right? I thought it was fine, but I really did. I was sold on this most recent episode, like, because that's what I said at the end of episode 4. I was like, the show's going in a direction that I hope is going to be how it ends. And 5 is the one that really, like, I was hoping it would be more weird, right? I was hoping it would be more kind of like Dominic said, internal and a mind fuck, basically, right? And that's kind of, I've heard someone say, I think it's Mike from Nerds of Color who wrote a review for a different site, but he kind of compared it to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in a way. And there was a lot of that in this, like the way it deals with memory and the way it deals with trauma and stuff, and I really appreciated that. One other thing I wanted to talk about with Mark Spector's origins is a bit of controversy I've seen on social media. As we know, when Oscar Isaac was first cast, who is a Latino actor, there was some worry that they would erase Mark Spector's Jewish identity. But this episode shows that Mark Spector was a Jewish American. But now I've seen some people saying, so they're erasing Oscar Isaac's Latinx identity.
By the way, those things aren't like one or the other. There could be Latin Jews.
Well, that's one. There are Jewish Latino people, but I thought it was also pretty clear that he was ethnically Latin in the show. Like the actors playing young Mark and Mark's brother and the mother were of Latinx origin. So I mean, I don't like, to your point, it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? Like he can be both. They confirmed his Jewish identity as well as adding a Latinx identity to the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can very well be both. Like, it's, you know, I don't know. I feel like in terms of, I don't know if he is ethnically someone who is also ethnically both Latinx and Jewish, but you can at least follow the religion and be, you know, Latinx. So I don't know what exactly it is, but I've seen people actually saying that they're, so far, you know, is there going to be a commentary on him being a Jewish man, technically being enslaved by an Egyptian god? Like, are they going to talk about that? And that, I don't know.
I mean, but that's straight out of the comics too, right? Like, I mean, that's the irony of the comics that
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Khonshu is the Egyptian god who has a Jewish man as his avatar.
The Jewish origin part is something, again, I'm not clear on from the comics. I know it's in there somewhere. I don't know how it affects the characters or the stories. The Latin origin thing, I don't think they're playing up a lot, except in the fact that Oscar Isaac is playing the role. And that's fine. They don't have to play up everything.
Mm-hmm.
It means there are different ways to be and express your identity. And I think I applaud them for casting a non-white person as Moon Knight, but they're still retaining his, like, religious identity. I don't know.
I mean, they could have not had a Jewish dad character. They could have given him like a very generalized kind of parent characters, but they chose to do that specifically, and it does add texture to the whole story. It localizes it more. Even the mom's death scene when he talks about the Shiva, it's like it makes it's things like that which add specificity, and I think add a needed extra energy to what's happening. Mm-hmm. Is it perfect? Is it representation of Jewish and Latin culture and Egyptian culture and all that things? No, it's not.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, any of these conversations about casting, there's still not enough ethnically specific roles that we would prevent other ethnicities from playing those roles. So, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. That maybe that's a problematic.
Well, no, it's not. No, it's the idea that's evolving. I mean, it's nuanced. I mean, also maybe it's the subject of a whole podcast.
It's I feel like it goes back to what Viola Davis said. If you can't audition for roles that aren't there, like, you know, like that's why, you know, still, like, even representation for Black people, maybe it's better than it used to be, but it's still not 100% there. So, and Viola said, like, you know, we can't win awards and get accolades for roles that aren't being presented to us, and that applies to, unfortunately, every underrepresented community. Like, you can't get the accolades or even the awards if the roles aren't being given to you. And if you only, unfortunately, until more roles are created for every single Pacific ethnicity, you're gonna have to unfortunately audition for what you can, and, you know, hopefully get something that, you know, you can do. And yes, there needs to be more, like, push when it comes to writing and thinking how the characters are gonna be represented. And that's why we also need more writers of color and casting directors of color too. It's not just actors. You're gonna really need to have more people in all the different positions in Hollywood for there to start really being a big, like, change. And, like, you know, because right now it's moving very slowly because we don't have enough people behind the scenes as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll make that the final word on Moon Knight and move into what's nerd poppin', because I know, Brittany, I've teased it earlier in the podcast. What's nerd poppin' for you is a very special movie, and what would that be?
Yes, so I saw it by myself, but I saw Everything Everywhere all at once, and I will try not to spoil it.
Yes, I have not seen it yet. I'm a bad Asian.
But it was...
Yeah.
It is. It's really, really good. And I would just say, like, tell your friends who aren't even into, like, you know, maybe weirder movies or, like, let's say non-big blockbuster movies to go see it, because it's just so good. And it is definitely a story just about not feeling like you can do anything, or, like, you don't have the gifts or the assets to, like, be great. And, like, it kind of, and then you putting yourself in this own box and not seeing your own potential. And it's a really beautiful movie about seeing that you have potential to do all this wonderful things and to be great, and just to also be more understanding maybe of where people are at and how they view, like, you and how they view themselves. I don't know. It was just very well done. The stunts, I think, are also by Andy Lee, who
Marshall
kind of
Club.
did some of the stunts for Shang-Chi, and he's in it too for, like, a couple of scenes. It was really good, and Jamie Lee Curtis was really fun in her role. Everyone was great. And it was nice to see, is it
Ke Huy Quan come back. Yeah.
Yes, because the last thing I think I saw him in was, like, honestly probably The Goonies or Temple of Doom. And
Yeah. I mean, he took a 40-year break from acting.
that's
And yeah. Well, and also, like, you know, also known as no roles for Asian Americans for 40 years.
yes, it was a forced break, but he's so good in it. I don't want to spoil it, but there's just really wonderful scene with him and Michelle Yeoh, and it's in one of the other, like, quote unquote realities, I guess you could say, but that scene is just, oh god, he's so good. I hope he somehow gets, like,
Well, you know,
some
I was going to say
sort of
Oscars don't
acting
matter. We all
accolade.
know Oscars don't matter, but
Yeah.
we love Oscars. We love the accolades, and I hope the Academy remembers next year around this time, because Michelle Yeoh has already been snubbed twice. She should have been nominated for Crouching Tiger, and she should have been nominated for Crazy Rich Asians. I think it's consensus at this point, like critically and by viewers, that this is her best movie and one of the best movies of the year. I have yet to see it, but I'm sure
It's
by
so
100% that they are all correct in that. So I hope at the very least Michelle Yeoh gets a Oscar
And it's
nomination.
very funny how this ties back to the MCU. Sarah Haley Finn, who was the casting director of the MCU, was actually the casting director for this film, and the Russo brothers actually were producers on this film
wow.
too. So, you know, I don't know if there's other people who know that, and that's why they're, like, you know, maybe part of why the movie's having such a sustained, like, you know, life in the box office, but it's really good. And I feel like this movie is proof that if you make smaller movies more accessible to everyone, people are more likely to see it, as well as, you know, obviously good word of mouth. But yeah, it was really good. And I also took my friend to see The Norseman, and she was like, I've never seen a movie like this. This is amazing. Like, I want to see more weird movies. So I feel like, yes, people need to know that more weird, different movies exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been a
people
really
enjoy them.
good year for movies so far, and we're only 4 months into it. So,
Yeah.
Dominic, what's nerd popping?
Nothing specific, but I did want to ask you about the Comic-Con thing. Considering whether or not I'm going to go to San Diego Comic-Con is my nerd popping conundrum of the week.
Didn't the Hotel Apocalypse already happen? Wasn't that last week?
What are you talking about?
The Hotel Apocalypse, isn't that what they call it when they release all the
Yes.
rooms for Comic-Con?
Yes, so I mean they're moving ahead. They're part of this trend of things that are coming. Like, we're back. Like, Oktoberfest is back. Baseball's back. Well, I say, but I'm more,
Right.
you know, psychologically myself. I don't know if I'm going back to that thing. It's not even so much a safety concern. It's just like it's been apart from that kind of shoulder to shoulder huge mob event, which used to be such a big part of my life. Now it's weird thinking about going back to that thing. So, but I was just asking around, you know, if you're going to. Okay.
I have no
Okay.
plans to go to Comic-Con this year. So if that influences whether or not you go to Comic-Con, I'm not going. And I don't know when I will go to a Comic-Con again. And the same thing, it's not like I'm not really like COVID paranoid anymore. It's just, I think similarly, I don't have a desire to just be around that many people for
And I
no
wonder if
reason.
that's something that's just changed in us over the past couple of years.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't help
I
that
don't
like
know.
we're also
I still
old.
go to concerts.
I mean, yeah, I'll go to shows. Like I've gone to a couple like, you know, theater shows, and I go to the movies once in a while. I'm not opposed to being around people, but I don't know that it's like Comic-Con in particular is a whole
See, I've
nother
never been.
level of being around
it's probably
people.
because part of the thrill of it was a pretty good random social event. Like, you could be randomly social with a lot of people. And now, I don't know. It's been so long since I felt that was okay. I just wonder. On scale, very much like a concert or a big show, but there's less rules, so there's like,
it's like 10 of them in like simultaneously in terms of like who you're co-mingling with.
Anyway, that's just something I'm thinking about for myself. But
yeah,
and yourself, any nerd popping stuff for you?
Yeah, I mean, mine is neither as thought provoking as either of yours, right? The movie or contemplating going to Comic-Con. I've just been really into the return of Atlanta. I finally caught up. I think they're like 6 episodes deep this season. It's the final season of Atlanta. And it's the best television show like on TV now and maybe ever. To your point, Brittany, about just allowing people to be weird. This show like breaks every rule. Right, like the show is called Atlanta, but the main cast is not in Atlanta the entire season. Right, they're on tour in Europe, and the episodes that do take place in Atlanta have nothing to do with like the story or the plot of Atlanta. So it's almost like the Atlanta episodes have been anthology. I don't know if you guys are caught up on this season, but the season premiere was like, it was almost like a Twilight Zone.
Well, I was gonna say
episode.
I do really love Atlanta, and then I started watching the first episode, and it was so upsetting. I couldn't go. The creepy shit with the moms and the little kids. Oh God, and I know it's gonna be awesome, but it just was like, I don't think I can handle this right now. That's meant to say how much I love Atlanta, not how much like.
Right. And there's another episode later in the season, which again has no characters of our main cast, like Paperboy, Darius, Van, Aaron. They're not in it. It's literally about like, what if reparations were real? And it follows this like white guy who's being sued for, his family owning a slave. And it's just real thought provoking. One of the more recent ones, it kind of like calls out Sean King and DeRay McKesson and like activists who like monetize their activism. It was like pretty like shots fired. I was like, damn, they're not even pretending that ain't DeRay because he's walking around in like a life vest the entire time. I was like, damn Donald Glover, damn. The cast of or the writers of Atlanta were not shy in calling them out.
Well, they're just excellent at satire and getting
right, exactly. And I will say,
points.
I want Hiro Murai to direct a movie.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
Because that dude is amazing. Yes, he's the director of most of the episodes of Atlanta. He's a close collaborator with Donald Glover. He directed like the This Is America video. He's directed all of like Childish Gambino's videos. And again, he's the main director on Atlanta. He directed the Teddy Perkins episode, which is I think the best episode of Atlanta. And again,
that's one of my
like
favorite ones.
How they like just lean into Afro surrealism and are just weird. And we need more content that's just allowed to be weird. And they are not shy about being weird. So shout out to Atlanta. It's the final season. I think there are like 3 or 4 more episodes left. And then that's it. But that's what's nerd popping from me. Brittany Monet, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Hi Brittany Monet on pretty much almost everything at least. And then you can check out at Naomi Podcast for everything about the CW's Naomi, as well as the backlog of Black Lightning and also the double feed for Lituation Room. And I might have a project announcing soon. So
we'll nice tease. We'll pick up on that later. Dominic, how can people find you?
I'm Dominic Ma. On Twitter or Instagram, I'll be Dama, DOMMAH.
You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow, and on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color and go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all of the podcasts in the Hard Knock family, including Southern Fried Asian, which just dropped a new episode. You can support us on patreon.com/thenerdsofcolor and subscribe to our videos at youtube.com/thenerdsofcolor. In fact, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and DM us on one of our social media platforms, I may have a digital copy of Turning Red to give you. So follow us and subscribe on youtube.com/thenerdsofcolor. And until next time.
That Justin Bieber joke in Atlanta was just perfection. That was my favorite part of early in the episode.